Hi, I'm Regan Robinson, your host of Future Fit, the only podcast unraveling the secrets of how the world's most innovative leaders stay future ready in a fast-paced world. I've spent over 20 years as a futurist and strategist, transforming top global brands and putting investment-backed startups on paths to sustainable growth. Along the way, I've become obsessed with new ways to prepare for the future, because thinking about the long term once a year simply isn't enough. In each episode, I talk with movers, shakers, and path breakers who share their stories about how they turn uncertainty into their strategic advantage. Throughout our journey, we'll discover unconventional and imaginative ways to help you thrive today while leading your teams into tomorrow. Future Fit leaders know that being prepared for what's next is more than a business decision. It's a way of being. Let's venture together as we co-create a new future readiness playbook. The future can't wait, and neither can I. So, are you ready to get future fit? So today I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Fahimeh Sasan, a board-certified and practicing OBGYN, deeply committed to reinventing care delivery and pushing the boundaries of what's possible in fertility health and beyond. Fahimeh is a widely recognized expert in her field and Chief Innovation Officer and founding physician of Kindbody, the leading national fertility clinic network and global family building benefits provider for employers offering the full spectrum of reproductive care from preconception to menopause. Fahimeh is also the assistant professor of obstetrics, gynecology, and reproductive medicine at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York, and is a member of the business group on Health's Evidence-Based Benefit Design Committee. While still in its infancy, wink, wink, Kindbody is already an industry powerhouse as the trusted benefits provider for 132 employers, covering almost 2.7 million lives, and has raised a staggering $315 million from leading investors, including JP Morgan Chase's Morgan Health and GV, which is the entity formerly known as Google Ventures, among many, many others. Kindbody was also recently named to the 2024 New York Digital Health 100, an honor that highlights the most exciting and innovative companies in New York, and was also named number 30 on the Deloitte Technology Fast 500, which recognizes the fastest growing and most innovative technology companies in North America. As a Kindbody patient who did elective egg freezing in 2022, I've personally experienced the innovation and intentionality that's infused in every aspect of the patient journey. So I am incredibly excited to hear what Fahimeh has to share with us today. And with that, welcome to the show, Fahimeh.
Thank you so much for having me. Wow, what a wonderful introduction. And it's always a pleasure to talk about the incredible work that we're doing here at Kindbody, but it also makes it especially nice to be speaking to a Kindbody patient who has firsthand experienced how we are trying to be innovative and future thinking and disruptive to the kind of what is unfortunately an archaic healthcare system. So pleasure to be here with you today. Excited to have this dialogue, and thank you for your kind words.
Likewise, likewise. So I would love to begin our conversation with a question that I pose to all of my guests, and that is, what does future ready mean to you?
Future ready to me, especially as a founding physician, as a woman, as an OBGYN, and as a mother, is really taking women's health and reproductive health to the next level. It demands that we bring an end to what has historically been a taboo culture around reproductive health. And I want to stress that I think a lot of people think about reproductive health and immediately think of women, and it's so essential that we think about it for entire populations, that fertility impacts 1 out of 6 adults, that reproductive health is not just about having babies, that it impacts us from puberty to menopause and beyond. And so when I think about future, it has to be about optimizing access to reproductive care. It has to be
Mhm.
about taking away some of the ignorance that currently exists in politics that are shaping some of the reproductive health decisions that are available. But it also means taking a preventative and proactive approach to reproductive health, not
Mhm.
just thinking about how do we, you know, help someone have a baby today, or how do we do contraception today, but how do we optimize people's health as they think about their future family, even if
Mhm.
that's 10 years from now, and the opportunity that has to help people focus on their careers, to help reduce some of the stigma that comes with an infertility diagnosis. So it's an area I'm really passionate about. It's an area that we at Kindbody are really, from a vision and mission perspective, are really dedicated to. And
Mhm.
it's a future where healthcare is not sterile and, white coats and degrees on the walls, but that is innovative and technology driven and patient centric, and really capitalizes or puts an emphasis on the patient experience.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what jumped out at me when you were talking is this idea of a paradigm shift or a mind shift, right? That like it sounds to you that future ready it is about this. What are the paradigm shifts and how are we leading the way, and how can then we demonstrate that in all the areas that we can? Immersing yourselves in different cultures from your own, whether that's through travel, literature, food, and really exposing yourself to different ways of life can dramatically widen your thinking patterns and stimulate your brain to think in unconventional ways, that will actually help you effectively think about the future. And so I'm curious, what are some ways that you, besides we know you love to travel, that you prepare yourself mentally for future oriented and imaginative thinking?
Yeah, I think by nature, I'm very much a positive person. A glass is not just half full, but overflowing, and really, and it almost comes naturally. And I recognize this doesn't come naturally to a lot of people, but just a really kind of optimistic view of even things that seem very challenging or difficult at the time, are opportunities for professional growth, for personal growth, for discovery.
Mhm.
And I think that really allows us to be forward thinking, because it's really easy to kind of get bogged down into the present of this project or this work or this effort today is difficult. But if you're
Mhm.
able to step back and say, okay, this is going to be a challenging month, year, couple of years with a startup or with a growth of a brand new company.
Right.
But the 5 years from now, this is going to lead to a revolution in fertility care, a revolution in healthcare, and to know that you have an opportunity to be a part of that, even if it's small.
Mhm.
That's what drives me, and
Yeah.
I know is a big motivation for a lot of the leaders within Kindbody that serve as my mentors.
We'll never underestimate the power of a possibility mindset, right? And also, I think it's helpful to remind ourselves like both of us, we have big missions and big visions and big impacts that we want to have, a legacy really that we want to leave. And it's like, this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. And so, finding ways to kind of maintain, sustain momentum is everything, right? You got finding ways to persevere. So, now, technology plays a key role in your approach to driving innovation. I sense there are process level innovations, there are innovations focused on support and optimizations that surround your offerings. And you recently shared in a podcast, now I'm going to paraphrase you here, that in 10 years' time, you're excited for Kindbody to become the place where people come for their first period through menopause and be a key player in improving women's health overall. And you talk about things like heart disease. And so I would love to hear a little bit more about your approach to innovation. So not only from that optimization perspective, but also through more of an exploratory lens. So how are you approaching innovation, particularly when driving Kindbody's expansion into other areas and this really bold and beautiful future vision that you've articulated?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think it's really important to realize that at the end of the day, only three things matter in healthcare, right? Clinical outcomes, because otherwise, if you're not if there's
Yeah.
not an
Then what's the
achievable
point?
outcome, what's the point? And so when I think about innovation, is that you have to be addressing all three of those things. So how do we improve clinical outcomes? How do we improve the patient experience? Because if you're not having a good experience, you're not going to stay committed to that healthcare, right? So we're
Right.
looking for the long haul. And then
Mhm.
lastly, how do you reduce costs? Because it is not sustainable for healthcare to be this expensive.
Right.
And so whenever we do anything at Kindbody, it's on a lens of how do we drive efficiency? How do we
Mhm.
use every member of our team, from our medical assistants all the way to the most veteran reproductive endocrinologist, double board certified, specialist? How do
Right.
we use every person to the highest caliber of their degree? And
Mhm.
how do we then use technology to help improve those efficiencies? And by that, listen, it's 2024. Science is smarter than humans at times. And so, how can we serve up protocols? How can we serve up proven data-driven metrics to our physicians, so you're not just going by the old school mentor mentee? Well, this is what my mentor taught me, so this is how I'm going to do it. How can we
Right.
make data-driven decisions? And so that's why we have really made an investment, so that we are using technology and data to drive our physicians' patient decision making, but
Mhm.
then also present that same data to our patients, so that they can be partners in their own care, and not
Mhm.
just subserviently blind, and you're just going by what your physician is telling you. And I think that
Mhm.
level of transparency can then translate to improving all of those things.
Mhm.
The last piece of it is that I think healthcare in general tends to live very much in silos.
Right.
And so it is imperative that all of these pieces are under the same platform, that are in the same
Mhm.
EMR, that are under the same care delivery system. So there
Mhm.
really is true integration. And we have a long way to go in the United States.
Right.
But I have no doubt that it's possible. I mean, think of all of the things that you can now do on your phone. And I mean, you and I are the same age. We
Mhm.
grew up with beepers. Do you remember
Yeah.
those?
Oh yeah, I had a purple one that I had to
Yeah,
hide from my parents.
exactly. So we grew up with beepers. That's just our lifetime. And look at
Right.
what has happened, and now what you can access from a phone.
It sounds like for you, innovation is you're looking at it through the lens of systems level, right? And so I think that in and of itself, it is innovative in terms of healthcare. And as you think about how you're expanding into these new categories, it's like, there's a lot of opportunity for synergy there. And the other thing that kind of came up for me is like, so, it's always interesting when you have like a B2B slash B2C slash B2C, whatever that is. It's
Uh-huh.
like you actually have multiple stakeholder groups. And I think looking at innovation through the lens of that transparency, co-creation, things like that, it actually sounds pretty intriguing because for my mom, when I led my mom's healthcare journey, which that could be a whole other podcast episode, it's like that's how we were able to create an advantage. My mom did not die from pancreatic cancer. She died from sepsis. Underlying cause, yes, but no, we turned it into a chronic disease over the course of 5 years. And it was actually that co-creation, cross-functional collaboration, the role that I played across 80 clinicians at 3 different institutions around the country that resulted in my mom having these phenomenal outcomes. So I have personally experienced the power of when you're looking at healthcare through that lens. So I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge how what a difficult journey you must have experienced with your mom. It's pancreatic cancer in itself can be a journey, and then to navigate it as a child for your parent, and all of the it sounds incredible work that you did. Um, so just
Thank
want to
you.
acknowledge that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, as we were talking about earlier, it's actually what I thought was the worst thing to ever happen in my life was actually the best thing, and it saved my life. But thank you for that. Now, so you've talked about how within the fertility space, benefits are no longer just a nice to have, right? Because such a large portion of the population is being affected, whether that's directly or indirectly. And so, what's at play here is really changing expectations, create future business opportunities, right? And given Kindbody's explosive growth and significant capital raise over the last several years, it's clear to me that you are opportunistically seizing change. So whether that's from a market and industry perspective, or a cultural and societal perspective, to really carve out this first mover advantage and really lead the way in the fertility space. And so I'm curious, how are you detecting and making sense of changes on the horizon in all these areas and really using those insights to inform your innovation agenda?
Self-insured employers play a very pivotal role. And I mean, I think we've only seen the beginning of their capabilities and the opportunities that companies like Walmart and early adopters of fertility benefits like Google and Facebook have to changing the shape of healthcare. Because as a self-insured employer, it's up to you, right? You have this amazing opportunity, and especially when you think about huge corporations that are, like largest employer in the United States, you have this opportunity to impact by providing benefits to your employee base. Yes, they're your employees, but if your employee is in every nook and cranny of America, from rural towns in
Right, yeah.
Somerville, Kentucky, to big urban cities like New York and Los Angeles, you're impacting change. And that's then healthcare companies and the government then can start looking at you as a model. And so I
Right.
think that's where we're now seeing things like fertility benefits and family building benefits and LGBTQ plus family building benefits and adoption and surrogacy and even menopause benefits are stemming from these employers. And so their
Mhm.
opportunity to challenge the status quo, to be disruptive, to say, this shouldn't cost this much, that we are going to have a center of excellence program like we serve for Walmart and things like that are truly opportunities to be not only be innovative, but to truly change the delivery of healthcare and ultimately improve access.
That's really interesting. So it sounds like you're really looking to your partners in that realm, even maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're using the insights that you're gleaning in those relationships to really help inform where your innovation agenda could, go next.
Absolutely.
So let's shift gears for a second and talk
Yeah.
about company culture. So, a culture of innovation seeds the very qualities that actually define a future ready company. So, things like adaptability, continuous learning, proactive change management. And together, these two things, innovation and future readiness, really create a dynamic and resilient environment that can anticipate and shape the future, which those are actually two different things, right? And you're able to strategize for the future more effortlessly today, as I like to say. And because of your background on the clinical side and then moving to the business side in your role at Kindbody, I'm curious to get your take on culture building through the lens of future readiness and innovation. So, how are you leveraging your experiences to shape an innovative culture at Kindbody, and what hurdles or even revelations have you encountered along the way?
Yeah. So the most important part of it, I think, for me and as a company is that unlike some of our peers in the space, because we have the subject matter expertise, so I'm just one of many physicians and scientists who are a part of what fuels Kindbody. When we say we're physician and scientist led, we are the embryologist. We run the IVF labs. We're engaging with the state of the art, equipment that
Mm-hmm.
that is powering what the healthcare that we're delivering. And so that allows us to be able to approach everything from a different lens. So, when a problem arises, like Roe v. Wade was overturned, or the Alabama ruling,
Mm-hmm.
where we can say from a perspective of a doctor and as a specialist, like what are the business implications of this thing, this ruling or this law or the politics that are happening? And how can we be innovative because we at our core believe that this is not backed by science? And so it's that merger of the scientific knowledge that we have,
Mm-hmm.
and then the business acumen to then be able to think outside the box and to either think and be able to foresee issues that will arise, but also address problems that they come in a more creative way. So, like for example, one of the reasons we're so focused on improving access to fertility care is that today 1 out of 6 adults are impacted by fertility, but we recognize that people's lifespan is only going to improve as people live longer. Their priorities will change.
Right.
And so we're going to I have no doubt, and as the LGBTQ plus community has a much stronger affinity to having biological children, as more and more
Mm-hmm.
single men and women want to be single parents,
Right.
and all of these things happen, that 1 in 6 is going to become more. And
Right.
also, unfortunately, as a result of we're starting to see sperm health decline, probably due to
Mm-hmm.
environmental toxins and
Right.
foods that we eat. So if that problem is going to get worse, I don't think people's desire to have children will decline. That's just kind of Nate,
Right.
implicit in
Human
human
nature.
evolution. Yeah, human
Right.
nature. So then having better access is going to become even more of an
Important.
issue and more
Yeah.
important. And so we're always looking at it from that futuristic lens.
Yeah.
And just by the virtue of being a rapidly growing company, being nimble and being able to adapt to change is just an instrumental part of what we do every day.
Yeah. So it sounds, that sort of cross-functional collaboration, you guys are really, harnessing as a strategic advantage. And then, the sort of from a customer and market orientation standpoint, really staying closely connected to, your patients. And I think how you've structured your culture and that appreciation is really remarkable.
We're also really humble to know that we are only at the beginning of our journey and our own
Mm-hmm.
evolution, and
Yeah.
there's so much more work that needs to be done and more optimization in every aspect of what we do. And I think that's also an important piece of being future fit or future ready is
Mm-hmm.
that while we all seek perfection, that you never actually get to perfection because then you're constantly trying to improve.
Yeah, yeah. I tend to now default to excellence versus perfection because those
Yeah,
are actually two different things too,
exactly. No,
right? So,
absolutely.
as a
Absolutely.
former reformed perfectionist, I'm not just striving for excellence. How's that?
Exactly. No, and that's really an important piece, right? I mean, as a company, that's a big part of our culture is just because it was good or it worked as we started the company doesn't mean that that is the best we can do, and to constantly evolve
Yeah.
and to constantly push the status quo. How can we
Mhm.
be better? How can we exceed
Mhm.
expectations?
Yeah, absolutely. So it turns out that you and I are philosophically aligned in our point of view about the roles that our respective companies and industries could play in people's lives. So in your case, you feel strongly that fertility care is about a proactive and preventative approach. And you recently said, I'm going to paraphrase here, that the desire to have biological children isn't worth the risk of not planning for it now and leaving it to chance, even though that is the norm. And that really resonated with me because the guiding principle of my work is prevention is better than cure. And while it's true for your health, it's also true for your company's health. And the biggest mistake I see is waiting until it's too late to think about the future, right? Short termism is, in my view, the biggest reason why companies will fail and downturn. And while you can make money off a declining business model for years, data shows that once a company runs up against a major stall in its growth, it has a less than 10% chance of ever recovering. So, what gaps or difficulties are you facing when taking a proactive and preventative approach to Kindbody's future and driving your long-term growth? And what advice would you offer for leaders who are struggling with similar challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the challenges that we're kind of meeting head on is understanding that with rapid growth comes operational challenges, right?
Oh, yeah.
Um, what works when you have five brick and mortar locations and state-of-the-art IVF laboratories suddenly doesn't work as well when you have 30. And not that the process is wrong, it's the process is still clinically evidence-based, but
Mhm.
to have that same quality. So a constant focus on operations and fine tuning of operations and improvement of operations is something we're very dedicated to, with
Mhm.
always the mindset of the patient first. So remembering that they're kind of the North Star, and then
Right.
that and being always driven by clinical excellence. But
Mhm.
operations become such a key important feature, and it's not something you evaluate on a quarterly basis or on an annual basis. It's something that you have to have your finger on the pulse of on a daily basis, and
Right.
needs to become inherent in the culture of every person, from the administrative person who has one role to the C-suite who have many roles and oversee other people. And if everyone has that focus, that becomes the key to success. And so, to
Mhm.
any entrepreneur, any new company, any startup, or even if you're an older company and well established, it's just always ensuring that your operations are fine-tuned, and to never be afraid of crumbling up the paper,
Yeah.
the SOP, and saying, okay, we need to reimagine this, we need to reinvent this, would be my best advice. And I think it's just such an important part of staying relevant and being innovative, and also being, future thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I almost said throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but I think that would be the wrong sentiment for what you were saying. But I think the
Yeah,
idea,
yeah,
babies are on my mind, clearly.
yeah, yeah.
What I think what you're saying is, like it's okay to start from a blank piece of paper, right? And I also think, I'm an operations nerd myself.
Yeah.
And, I think there's a lot of inspiration, that is out there in terms of companies that aren't even in your industry or your sector, that are always great to look at, from a imagination perspective. Like I love watching documentaries on how companies were built because I find that I learned, especially companies that were built in the early 1900s. It's like, oh wow, that's how like electricity came to be, and like how did they build it? Because you never know what you're going to learn from those kinds of things around. Oh, okay, well this is an operations piece
Absolutely.
that might actually help us.
Yeah, and anything is possible, right? I mean, it's funny, and this is just totally off topic, but the other day I was in the elevator, and one of the food delivery guys, like grocery store delivery companies,
Uh-huh.
had like what was very clearly someone's like basic groceries in a bunch of bags, and they were delivering it to this person's home, which is
Uh-huh.
totally normal, right? I live in New York City. That's like,
Right.
it's just normal.
Right.
But for a moment, I was just like, wow, if someone had said just 5 years ago, right? Not that long ago, just 5 years ago, that people were going to stop buying their own groceries, that you were going to have people buy and deliver your groceries for you, and you weren't going to squeeze the, tomato
The
yourself
fruit, yeah.
anymore or whatever, it would be, you would have said that's bizarre, but
Mhm.
it's now normal. So, and
Right.
that's a completely different industry,
Yep.
but that's an industry that's really tapped into convenience
Yeah.
and being, I guess, respectful of time. And now,
Yeah.
philosophical discussion as to whether or not being at the grocery store adds some, is an important part of
Right. Well, my Instacart account would say that no, but how you're on
But
there.
no,
It says
and I'm
you
just saying,
saved
like,
200
but that's
hours.
where, like, and how they've perfected it, where you are getting the perfectly squeezed tomato, and you don't have to do it yourself. But I think that's like
Right.
a lesson that can be learned from how you can automate and bring to the masses, not just wealthy people getting their groceries delivered, but regular people. And so
Yeah.
there's always lessons that have to be learned. And I think that's probably, as we get into our last few minutes, that's probably, in my opinion, as a doctor, why healthcare has failed so far, is that it's always lived in a silo of like doctors know best and the healthcare system knows best. And they
Right.
haven't taken the lesson from technology and from all this innovation that's happening in the world.
Yeah.
And so that healthcare is a little behind.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and so, but here, we're companies like ours are here to challenge that, and we'll catch up. But that's I think that's the reason it's so imperative to look at other sectors and see how can we improve healthcare by taking a lesson from even the grocery delivery
Yeah,
companies.
absolutely. One of the fundamental principles to the work I do is, you want to refrain from narrowcasting and focusing on the familiar. You want to get outside of what you already know and to go into spaces and places where you don't have any experience,
Yeah.
because you never know how, imagination in your brain, and we know how that works from cognitive science and neuroscience, how it's going to take those little bits of information. Imagination is the ability to create the idea of something that does not exist today, and your brain is cognitively piecing things together, which, I mean, you can tell these I get
Yeah,
so excited about
yeah,
this,
yeah,
but I think it's really that is a superpower. So
absolutely.
I love that. Now, with that, I know we're out of time. And so was there anything else that you were hoping I would ask or that we didn't get to that you wanted to share?
No, I think it's just thinking about the future as for companies, big and small, startups or well established, is just an essential part, right? I mean, I, everything about our lives is for the next step. We go to school
Yeah.
so we can be educated, so we can get a good job, right? We eat healthy so we can live a long life, and so thinking about the future is just such an essential part of the success of a company, and then making sure that you have really strong core mission and vision. Not to say that that mission and vision may not evolve with
Right.
time, but
Hmm.
staying true to that becomes an essential part of success, I think, and is why I think Kindbody has been so successful so far, and why I have no doubt that we will continue to push the envelope, is a true
Hmm.
dedication to clinical excellence, the patient experience, and to improve access to care,
Hmm.
and to not be afraid to be disruptive.
Right, right. So, a final question before you share where people can find you. How much do you think preparing for the future is about avoiding risk versus seizing opportunity?
Oh, I think it's 100% about seizing opportunity.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think some of the Gina Martese, who's our chairwoman and founder, is the queen of seizing opportunity, and a huge mentor of mine. And I think that her success as a self-made entrepreneur, and the successes that she's driving Kindbody to are definitely 1000% as a result of recognizing risk and work, but always being okay with that, with challenges, and kind of
Yeah,
taking, yeah.
I love that. And with that, where can people go to find out more about you and your work and Kindbody?
Yeah, so super easy. Kindbody.com. That's our website. You can find everything there, from how to schedule an appointment with one of our specialists to our clinical excellence, our research, I'm a big fan of spreading the word about what we do, and so I'm often a speaker of ours. But there's lots of really expert veterans on our team who also have really championed voices that I encourage you to look around. But we're everywhere. We're in social media. But kindbody.com is where you can find us. And we hope that everyone out there kind of is enlightened and given kind of a nudge to be more proactive about their own health.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time and your powerful insights, Fahimeh. I am truly inspired, and it has been enlightening speaking with you today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Future Fit. If you're listening, you're probably future curious. So follow me in my newsletter on LinkedIn to keep the conversation going and share your discoveries with the Future Fit community. And if you enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe, rate, and review Future Fit on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time.